Look at this. Right here on my hand is a tomato hornworm as fat as my thumb and near about 4 inches long. Bright green, that stiff little horn on its tail end, and I pulled it off this tomato plant not 30 seconds ago. And look what it did. This whole top branch chewed down to bare stem. My name is Earl. I've grown tomatoes on the same ground for 51 years, and I'm going to show you how to stop it for about $1, using the blue bottle of Dawn dish soap already sitting by your kitchen sink. And the one time you should walk away and leave it be. It works, it costs almost nothing, and the garden store would very much rather you didn't know. Now watch what happens next, because this is the whole trick. In this jug, I've got plain water and a good squirt of this, Blue Dawn, the same dish soap that's under half the kitchen sinks in America. I mix it up, I pour it into this sprayer, and I'm going to coat this plant top to bottom. And this fat fellow, I'm going to drop him right into a bucket of the same blue water, and I want you to watch how fast he quits. That blue soap is the difference between a plant full of tomatoes come August and a plant full of sticks. Stay with me, because the part that actually kills them is the part nobody explains. In his last week of growth, one single hornworm can put away an entire tomato plant's worth of leaves. And he doesn't stop at leaves. He chews the green tomatoes too, takes big gouges out of them, and leaves them to rot on the vine. And here is the cruel part, the reason he gets away with it. He is the exact same green as the plant. You can stand 2 feet away staring right at a worm the size of your finger and never see him, because millions of years of nature taught him to disappear against a tomato leaf. So the plant just starts vanishing and you can't figure out why. But he leaves a calling card, and once I teach you this, you'll never miss him again. Look on the ground under the plant and on the leaves lower down for what looks like little black-green pellets, like coarse pepper or tiny barrels. That's his droppings. Gardeners call it frass. And here's the trick. The frass falls straight down. So when you find a pile of that dark grit on a leaf or on the soil, you look straight up above it, and that is where your worm is sitting, right up the branch over the mess he made. The frass gives him away every time. And there is one more way to flag him that I'll show you in the method, using nothing but a spray of plain water. But first, do me one small favor, and it takes 2 seconds. Reach down and tap that red subscribe button right underneath this video, bottom left, next to my name. That's all. It's free, and it keeps cheap, honest tricks like this one getting passed along instead of forgotten. Thank you kindly. Now let's get into it. I learned the soap from my mother. She kept the tomatoes when I was a boy, and she came up through the tail end of the Depression, when you did not drive to a store and buy a bottle of bug killer because there was no bottle and there was no money. What she had was a bar of hard lye soap, the kind she made herself in a kettle. And when the worms and the aphids came, she'd shave a little of that soap into a bucket of warm water, let it melt, and sponge it and fling it right onto the plants. And it worked. I watched it work my whole childhood. Nobody had taught her the chemistry of it. She just knew, the way that whole generation knew things, that soapy water did something to a soft-bodied bug that plain water didn't. Years later, sometime in the 1970s, that Blue Dawn showed up on the grocery shelf, and I got to fooling with it out in the garden the way I fool with everything. And I'll be honest with you, it worked better than my mother's lye soap ever did. Cleaner, gentler on the leaves, easier to mix, and you could buy a bottle for pocket change that lasted a whole summer. So I've used it every year since. 50-some summers of tomatoes, and I keep a set of composition notebooks out in the garage, 1 line a year, and I can show you the seasons I stayed on top of the worms and the seasons I got lazy. And the difference in what came off those plants in August is the whole story right there. So let me tell you why soap of all things beats a caterpillar, because once you understand it, you'll trust it. A soft-bodied insect and a hornworm egg, a little just-hatched worm, an aphid, all of them, is not built like you and me. He does not breathe through a mouth and lungs. He breathes through a row of tiny holes down the sides of his body, little portholes called spiracles, and he's kept from drying out by a thin, waxy coat over his skin. Soap does 2 things to that, and both of them are fatal. First, soap cuts grease. You know that from your own dishes. And that waxy coat is exactly the kind of grease soap was born to dissolve. It strips his waterproofing right off, and a soft-bodied bug without his waterproofing dries out and dies. And second, the soapy water creeps into those little breathing holes and clogs them, and he suffocates. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. You are not poisoning him with some chemical his body's never met. You're taking his raincoat and plugging his nose, and no bug survives that for long. Now the eggs. This is the part that matters most and that nobody tells you. Before you ever see one of those big 4-inch worms, the moth has already been by at night and laid her eggs. Little pale green-white pearls stuck to the undersides of the leaves, one here, one there. Every one of those is a plant-stripping monster waiting to hatch. And that thin soap spray, laid onto the underside of the leaf, kills those eggs and kills the tiny just-hatched worms before they're big enough to hurt anything. That's the real power of it. You're not just fighting the giant you can see, you're wiping out the invisible wave coming behind him. There was real work done on this a long time back, on soap as an insect killer, and the numbers are the kind that never quite make it onto the shelf at the garden store. Trials of a plain, properly diluted soap spray on soft-bodied pests and their eggs came back showing kills north of 90%, better than 9 in 10 on the eggs and the young ones, from a spray that cost a few pennies a gallon. 9 in 10. But you cannot build a business selling a man a bottle of the dish soap he already owns. There's no money in it. So that knowledge stayed the kind of thing your grandmother knew, and the label on the blue bottle will never mention. And here's the part that turned me sour, and you can check it yourself the next time you're in the garden aisle. They sell a product called insecticidal soap. Comes in a nice bottle with a picture of a bug on it, $12, $14 for a quart. And if you turn that bottle over and read what's actually in it, it is soap and water. That's the product. That's the whole thing. It is the exact same idea my mother worked out with a bar of lye soap and a bucket, put in a fancy bottle and sold to you for 10, 20 times what the blue stuff under your sink costs to do the identical job. I'm not saying anybody's lying. I'm saying they took the cheapest, oldest trick there is, dressed it up, and let you forget the plain answer was ever there. So let me hand you the plain answer. Here is exactly how I do it. The mix is simple, about 2 tablespoons of Blue Dawn to 1 gallon of water. Not more. A heavier hand doesn't kill more bugs, it just burns your leaves, and I'll come back to that. Plain Blue Dawn, the original kind, not the stuff cut with bleach or heavy degreasers. Just red the front and keep it simple. Stir it gentle. You don't want a big head of foam, you just want the soap worked evenly through the water. If you've got a spoonful of plain vegetable oil, you can add it in. It helps the spray cling to a waxy tomato leaf a little longer, but it'll do fine without. Pour it into any pump sprayer. Now the timing of day matters as much as the mix. You spray in the cool, early morning before the sun's on the plants, or in the evening after it's off them. Never in the heat and glare of midday, because soap plus hot sun is how you scorch a leaf. And you coat the whole plant, but you pay special mind to the undersides of the leaves. Because that's where the eggs are, and that's where the young worms hide. Anywhere you found that dark frass, spray heavy right there and up above it. For the big ones you can see, you don't even need the sprayer. You pluck them off by hand and drop them straight into a bucket of the same blue soapy water, and the soap finishes them in a minute or two. And here's that reveal trick I promised you. Before you go hunting, take your hose or a spray bottle of plain water and give the plant a good misting. A hornworm hates being wet and jostled, and he'll rear up and thrash that front end of his, and that little bit of movement is what breaks his camouflage. You'll spot 3 you never knew were there. Wet the plant, watch for the wiggle, pick them off, spray the rest for the eggs. Then you do it again every 5 to 7 days, and after any hard rain washes your soap off, right on through the summer. That's the entire method. Now I have to stop and be honest with you about the cautions, because there are a couple, and they're easy. Number 1, do not mix it strong. I know the temptation. You figure if 2 tablespoons is good, a big glug must be better. It is not. Too much soap burns the plant. You'll see the leaf edges go yellow and crispy, and now you've hurt the very plant you were trying to save. Keep it light, spray in the cool of the day, and if you've got a tender variety you're unsure of, spray 1 branch first and check it the next morning before you do the whole plant. Number 2, use plain Dawn, not a version loaded with bleach or extra chemicals, and rinse anything you're about to pick and eat that same day. It's soap it washes off, just be sensible. And number 3, and this is the one that separates a real gardener from a man just spraying everything that moves. Sometimes you should leave the worm alone. If you find a hornworm with what looks like a bunch of little white grains of rice standing up off his back, do not kill him. Do not touch him. Those white things are the cocoons of a tiny wasp that hunts hornworms. The wasp laid her eggs inside him. Her young ate him alive from the inside. And now they're spinning up on his back to hatch out and go kill more hornworms in your garden for free. That worm is already dead where he stands, and he's about to become a nursery for your own private army. Leave him right there on the plant. That's nature doing your job for you, and a wise gardener knows when to step back and let her. Let me tell you why this week matters, why you can't put it off till the plant looks bad. The hornworm comes from a big night-flying moth. Some folks call it a sphinx moth or a hawk moth. And she lays through the warm part of the summer, more than one round of eggs in a season. Right now, the heart of the summer is when she's laying and when those eggs are hatching. So every week you're spraying the undersides of those leaves. You are killing the next batch before it can grow up and strip your plant. Wait until you can see the big worms and the damage, and you've already lost leaves and fruit you're never getting back. And there's another wave of eggs right behind them. Get ahead of it now, stay ahead of it weekly, and you keep your plants whole clear through to the last tomato. I had a neighbor, a widow named Ruth, grew tomatoes every summer to can for the winter. That was half her pantry, those jars. And one August she came knocking on my door about near tears because she'd gone out to a row of 8 beautiful plants and found 3 of them chewed down to nothing overnight and couldn't for the life of her see what did it. I walked over and I flipped a few leaves, and there they were, frass everywhere, and 4 fat worms hiding in plain sight, and a dozen eggs on the undersides she never knew to look for. I gave her a bottle of the Blue Dawn off my own shelf, showed her the mix and the misting trick, and told her spray every leaf, top and bottom, twice a week. She saved the 5 plants she had left, and she never lost a rout of hornworms again. Put up 70-some jars that fall. Cost her about $1 in soap. She used to bring me a jar of her tomatoes every Christmas after that, right up until she passed. And I've still got the last one on a shelf in the cellar. So let me lay the whole thing out one more time plain. 2 tablespoons of Blue Dawn to a gallon of water, mixed gentle. Spray in the cool of morning or evening, coating the tops and especially the undersides of the leaves. Hand pick the big worms into a bucket of the same soapy water. And mist the plant with plain water first to make the hidden ones show themselves. Do it again every 5 to 7 days and after every rain, all summer long. Watch for the frass to find them and leave any worm wearing white cocoons alone because he's already working for you. That's it. $1's worth of blue soap standing between you and a row of bare sticks. There's a bottle of that Blue Dawn on my potting bench right now. And next to it, up on a little shelf, is my mother's soap dish. The one she kept her homemade lye soap in when she was fighting these same worms off these same kinds of plants 70 years ago, with nothing but what she could make in a kettle. I keep them side by side on purpose, because that's the thing about this kind of knowing. It doesn't wear out, and it doesn't care what fancy new bottle comes along. My mother figured out the truth of it with a bar of soap and a bucket in the hardest years this country ever saw. And all I ever did was find a cheaper, easier soap to do the same honest thing. Knowledge like that only dies one way, if the person who has it doesn't hand it down. So I'm handing it to you. Go try it this week before the next wave hatches. And then come back down here to the comments and tell me 2 things. Tell me how your tomatoes held up. And tell me this, did your mother or your grandmother have some cheap old trick like this? Something out of the cupboard that worked when there was no money for anything else? Because a whole lot of you did. And a whole lot of us let those tricks go quiet when they passed. Write it down here. Every time one of you does, it wakes it back up in 10 other people reading along. And if this was worth your time, stay with me. Because next week, I'm taking on the potato and the little striped beetle that turns a whole potato patch to lace this time of year, with a trick you do down at the roots that clears them out before the next batch ever hatches. Until then, mix your blue soap light, spray it in the cool of the day, and pass it down.